Trigger warning, we're going back to the glory days of Australian Rugby Union. Remember this ad?
So what do we want to be?
Wallaby. A wallaby. Wallaby.
20 years ago, everyone wanted to be a wallaby. Now, kids don't even know who they are. This is David Campese, the legendary Australian Union superstar of the 90s and early noughties.
A couple of questions I do after training. I ask the kids, I'll ask one kid, what's your name? He said, Johnny, what position, number 10, who's your favourite player? Haven't got one.
Campese was talking to Jessica Halloran, our chief sports writer, for a podcast we made called The Breakdown. As the name suggests, it's an exploration of how rugby union went from the pinnacle of Australian culture to,
Okay, ask someone else. They normally probably say Kiwi. And I find that strange. They're playing rugby, but they don't know who the players are.
Here's Jess.
Well, if you speak to anybody at the grassroots, they will say it's a game that's struggling and dying and it's really hard to get the participation happening. But I know now there's a concerted effort on to try and revive the game at its grassroots. But first, they feel like they have to get their number one product right, and that is the Wallabies, and that's getting the Wallabies winning again to kind of revive that interest in the game. They're fighting for relevance in a really crowded sporting marketplace. I mean, look at the Matildas. They're grabbing the front and back pages every day of the week right now with the World Cup being on. Then you've got, of course, the Australian cricket team who've just retained the Ashes.
Well, now Rugby Australia has a plan to fix itself, hopefully in time for the Bledisloe Cup kicking off this weekend and the World Cup in France in September. Rugby Australia has come up with some ads playing into the perception they're past it. A teenage boy opens the door to someone doing a survey. His father's in the living room watching Rugby Union.
Dad, there's a bloke here reckons the Wallabies are going to be world champions.
What, this year?
Yeah, this year in France.
Please, tell him the Wallabies are ranked like number 7 in the world.
The Wallabies are ranked like number 7. Oh, he said he knows that.
Well, tell him France are playing at home this year.
He said France are playing at home this year.
What'd he say?
He says you really know your rugby. And what else you got?
You could tell him from me, the Wallabies have absolutely no chance.
Dad said the Wallabies have absolutely no chance.
Absolutely no chance. Perfect.
Who is this for?
The Wallabies. We love proving Dad's wrong.
The guy taking the survey, that was Eddie Jones, Wallabies coach.
Oh, I thought it was so much fun. This is Eddie Jones at his best, right? Like, he delivers these lines with his wry smile and the last line where he says, we love proving Dad's wrong. I mean, what a absolute corker of a line, which is what the Wallabies are out to do, is to prove everyone wrong, like that they can win this, that they're a chance of winning this World Cup, which Eddie Jones has maintained since he took the job. He said this is going to be a smash and grab job, that they can do it.
Eddie Jones was sacked as Wallabies coach in December 2005 after a run of poor form, and was picked up by England, where he set a new record for success, taking the England side to 59 test wins and taking out the 2020 Six Nations tournament. In January, Jess broke the news that Rugby Australia was bringing Jones back. Here's how that's going.
The game comes to a close, and Argentina have done it again at Combank Stadium. They're giant killers. Argentina 34, Australia 31 today.
Full time at Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria. It's South Africa 43, Australia 12.
They've lost 2 games on the trot with Eddie in charge. They lost to South Africa in Pretoria, and then they lost to Argentina out at Parramatta last week. So, look, it's been pretty miserable, but there is still positivity and hope.
The dads who Eddie Jones is talking about in that ad are really a pretty traumatised generation, aren't they? They were in their 20s when the Wallabies were flying high. They might have played rugby themselves at high school. And over the past 2 decades, they've watched all their favourite players get either picked off and go and play rugby league or just not fire. Do you think the fans are going to be able to give their trust again to the Wallabies and put some hope in them?
I know a lot of these guys, these dads, and they are so rusted on. They've bought tickets to go to France and watch the Wallabies. They've bought tickets to go to the Bledisloe on the weekend. There's still hope. And look, there's a crowd of almost 80,000 people expected at the MCG on Saturday. Pete, there is an underlying sense of positivity, but also they're mildly masochistic, aren't they, as sports fans?
Coming up, more of Eddie's acting and the one superstar who is front and centre for the Wallabies. In another of Rugby Australia's new ads, Eddie Jones is a hairdresser listening to another disappointed dad, this time the barber.
Useful.
Wish you had more of those, hey? Wouldn't want to be in your shoes, mate.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Wait, so you blokes think you can win the whole thing?
Mate, we're not going to France for the croissants.
I spoke to Rugby Australia's Chief Executive Phil Waugh, as we know, who captained the Wallabies and also played for Eddie Jones. And he's convinced that Eddie wasn't acting in these ads, that it is just him. This is exactly who he is. The advertising execs have said they were trying to capitalise on an underlying confidence that the Wallabies have. And look, only time will tell if this confidence was rightly held.
It's interesting that it's Eddie Jones and not one of the stars of the actual team who is starring in these ads. Why is that?
Well, I think what you've seen over the last decade is this decimation of Super Rugby. It's really become quite irrelevant in the public consciousness of sport. The big sports of AFL and NRL have completely obliterated it. You don't have that mass audience anymore. You don't have the television ratings of 1 million people tuning into the Super Rugby final. It's not what it once was. And so therefore, we've got kids, Claire, and they don't know who they are. And Eddie Jones is the man, and he's the face of this team. And behind that, you probably argue Quade Cooper.
Here though, and somehow he gets it away to Cooper. Cooper showing and going. Cooper dummying. Quade Cooper, absolutely brilliant.
In 2012, Quade Cooper, the magical fly half, was frozen out by the Wallabies after publicly criticising the then coach Robbie Deans. And he played only intermittently for Australia during years of injuries and gigs with overseas clubs. Now, at the age of 35, Quade Cooper is back.
He's one of those people, I would say, athletes later in life that has really looked after his body and he would argue his mind to get himself into that position and back into the team. And I mean, it's quite a feat by him still being in the Wallabies all these years on. And yeah, he's one of the last. He's definitely the oldest and still consistently a better player on the team.
Do you think Eddie Jones presides over a culture where he will be able to speak his mind?
That's an interesting question. I think that what Eddie has been trying to do is unite this team with what he says is a bit of the Anzac spirit. But first and foremost, it's about trying to teach a team that has lost more than it's won in recent times to win again.
Matilda's fever has taken the country by storm as we co-host the Women's Soccer World Cup.
In the area, Cutley scores! And sends the majority of the 80,000 plus inside Stadium Australia into rapture.
What does the way Australians have got behind the Matildas show about what we actually want from our teams? Do we just want them to win?
Yeah, we do want them to win, but we love an underdog. Australians love the underdog, and the Wallabies are our underdog right now in world sport. So they have not won a Bledisloe Cup since 2002, which is just an extraordinary stat. But there is great hope that perhaps they can start their winning ways again at the MCG on Saturday night and under Eddie Jones. And obviously we haven't won a Rugby World Cup since 99. The people I've spoken to within Rugby Australia have said this team has the talent, but they just need to learn how to win. That they've been losing often and therefore they've kind of, lost their confidence a bit. They've got the cattle, they've got the talent. They just need to be able to win. And I think the loss against Argentina the other week was pretty devastating because they lost that match in the final minute. But look, Eddie's hoping to turn it all around, and as we see, he's garnering so much publicity by being front and centre of these ads. Like, he is the man, and he's hopefully the man to revive Australian rugby.
Jessica Halloran is The Australian's chief sports writer. You can hear The Breakdown, which is a hilarious and horrifying deep dive into how rugby nearly killed itself, by searching The Breakdown wherever you got this podcast. Inflation fell by 1 percentage point over the past year in a hint of good news, which might mean rates stay put for a little longer. You can find out all about that and read our experts' analysis right now at theaustralian.com.au.